I saw a crazy thing from the weekend where Hasan Piker was dressed like Mao.
You know what's in the air, you know what's in the air, you know what's in the air, you know what's in the air. It's possibility, it's possibility, it's possibility, it's possibility.
All right, so David Pakman recently made some comments about Hasan Piker and the newer strand of DSA candidates in the Democratic Party conversation, kind of the whole thing together. He decided that he had some critiques for that on his most recent episode of his show. So these are clips that have been going around of Hasan Piker because of a speech that he did at a college where he's wearing the Chinese suit that he likes wearing recently ever since he did a trip to China. And so everybody says that's his communist suit. He's being a communist, and Fox News has been posting clips of him doing the speech, etc. There was also drama surrounding this because Destiny decided to target this particular event, wanting to go there deliberately to harass. He has said specifically that he is going to harass anybody or any institution that is hosting Hasan Piker. So in the wake of that sort of controversy, which we'll get into all of it and breaking it down, David Pakman decided to make some comments about that, but also folding it into this critique of the further left strain of Democrats, you could call them, in a critique that sounds a lot like what Fox News would say or centrist Democrats would say. So this kind of middle ground that commentators like him specifically want to carve out, where they can say, no, we are the left, we are opposed to centrism, but also using the same tactics to punch left that those centrists and right-wingers do. So here's Pakman on Hasan Piker and the left.
The Democratic Party is showing the early signs of the same disease that destroyed the Republican Party. I've got so many friends on the left texting me and saying, David, we're not going to allow the same thing to happen on the left that Trump did to MAGA, that Trump and MAGA did to Republicans, are we? Republicans, back in 2010, their leaders laughed at the Tea Party. Conspiracy theorists, they're far-right internet trolls, they're not going to do anything. And then the Tea Party took over local organizations, threatened primaries, built their own media universe, and eventually were part of a process that gave us Donald Trump. The left and Democrats can't make the same mistake. There is a small group of far-left extremists gaining influence inside youth groups and party organizations because they spend all day online organizing and enforcing ideological purity and attacking anyone who disagrees. Now, let me be very clear. I am not talking about people who want Medicare for all and affordable housing. I want all that stuff. I'm with all that stuff. I'm a social democrat in the style of Northern Europe. Of course I want those things. These are folks who treat political warfare like a full-time job. And when they can't build their own coalition, they attach themselves to popular causes. They take real concerns about healthcare, housing, police misconduct, and use them to sell what is actually an authoritarian worldview. I saw their new platform. Promises a country where you have no debt, you pay no rent, no mortgage, you receive publicly funded housing, publicly funded retirement, food, education, energy, medicine, transportation. And it sounds incredible because it is incredible. How would they create it? Government ownership of the largest corporations and of entire industries, universal rent control, abolishing police and prisons, and abolishing the Senate and replacing our political system. Some of these ideas are reasonable to a degree. I saw a crazy thing from the weekend where there was a college Democrats convention, which I was actually invited to participate in, and I couldn't make it. Hasan Piker was dressed like Mao, and I guess Destiny tried to show up, and he was banned from entering allegedly because the Mao-dressed Piker didn't want him there. Republicans are going to put these clips everywhere. People seem crazy when they see this stuff, and they are going to abolish the police and abolish borders and abolish prisons and play them on a loop for 6 months. What we need here are no apologetics for dictatorship, no apologetics for authoritarianism, no harassment, no anti-Semitism, no allowing online factions to decide which liberals may enter the room. You know, what would I even have been allowed at that college Democrats thing? They invited me months ago. I don't know. I mean, I couldn't go, so we didn't find out.
All right, so this is odd, not because it doesn't track with his recent trend politically, because it does. And, you know, there was the recent Chorus drama, which whatever you think of that reporting or of Chorus as an organization, you could at very least say that it lumps David Pakman in with this strain of other content creators who are a little bit more on the liberal centrist side, who are not willing to go further on policy positions and don't support a sort of broader embrace of socialism or things approaching that. So that's exactly the type of distinction that he's trying to make here. The reason that it's odd is because he effectively is arguing against the strain of Democrats that he himself has been instrumental over the years in helping to construct. A few years ago, during the first parts of the first Trump administration, David Pakman was one of the few voices in this left-wing space that was critiquing Trump and the right from a particularly social democratic or democratic socialist perspective. So clearly he feels he is more a social democrat than a democratic socialist. I've seen a couple of the other guys in that space make that same distinction. And there is an important distinction ideologically there. So if they want to make it, that's fine. But like I said, he finds himself critiquing the left and, you know, anyone to the left of himself in the way that the right and centrist Democrats have been pushing back on literally his strain of progressivism in the Democratic Party forever. So it's just a little odd to see clearly, whether it be financially incentivized, or I think that Israel has a lot to do with it. I think that Pakman is a more strong supporter of Israel than most people on the left ever were. And so that has become a breaking issue for him when it comes to the left. And so that's why we're seeing a slightly broader shift. So he's willing to say here that, like, oh, I still support Medicare for all. I still support these social programs, but he's getting a little uncomfortable with the language. He's getting a little uncomfortable with the aesthetics that he sees coming from the left. And we see this a lot. A lot of people in the Democratic Party establishment, you know, have been saying this. And it is true that we see a lot of propaganda to the effect of, you know, Democrats are so radical and they all want to abolish, you know, borders and abolish police and all of this stuff. And so you're seeing now a resurgence of this critique in response to the fact that the DSA wing is becoming more powerful electorally. You're seeing the reactionary pushback saying that these people are just saying anything. These are crazy radical positions that people don't support. Meanwhile, it is these candidates who are voicing these, in some cases, radical positions, in some cases, common sense positions that are actually getting people's attention in the party. And when David Pakman talks about how we don't want this to be a Tea Party on the left, or we don't want it to do what MAGA did to the Republicans, that is where it becomes clear kind of what the concern is here. Because that has been a very successful project on the right. The Tea Party has been enormously successful. And yes, it has let a lot of radicalism in on the right side. And that is a bad thing because right-wing radicalism is particularly bad. And so the fear coming from the centrists and the David Pakmans, I suppose, is that a similar type of Tea Party thing is going to allow ideologies to thrive in the Democratic Party that are equally or similarly dangerous to those right-wing radicalisms that have emerged. So this is really the fundamental place where that false equivalence cannot be allowed to stand. And again, David Pakman has argued against this same type of false equivalence many, many times. The idea that, you know, even going further than your average Democrat or your average social democrat would go on issues like the border or healthcare or housing or whatever, that is still not nearly the same as the type of radicalism that we see currently in power in the Republican Party. And even things like nationalizing certain industries and stuff. I mean, these are in some cases basic remedies to overreach from corporations or just simple economic conditions that demand something a little further than market incentives in order to keep industries that are too big to fail not failing. And so again, I mean, I think the main thing that he's talking about in this kind of fear mongering that he's doing is the issue of Israel, and that there are people in this new DSA coalition who use language that makes, you know, the liberal Zionists extremely uncomfortable. And what I think is that a lot of this fear mongering and pearl clutching is going to be coming over the next few years. This is going to be relentless. And you're going to see it from liberals. You're going to see it obviously on Fox News all the time. And every single little thing is going to get amplified, and they're going to try to get their hooks in people in any way that they can. You see them doing it with Hasan Piker. Literally any name on the left, they're going to do it relentlessly. So I think what we got to do is revel in that a little bit. And I think there needs to be a sense of having fun with some of these narratives and kind of basking in the controversy, because that is what the right wing has done. And the truth is that if you can maintain your support throughout the pearl clutching, throughout the fear mongering, I want that to be neutralized, and I want people to be inoculated against it. And so there have to be two things that happen. There has to be a sort of an ability to respond to these criticisms without taking it too seriously, in order to, consistently defending yourself and the movement from these basic attacks, but doing it in a way that doesn't seem to be sweating it too much. And also, there has to be a consistent effort to make sure that people are being met where they're at in terms of voters and meeting people's needs. And so doing the type of things that Mamdani is doing, even though in my opinion he's taken some L's recently, he has very smartly focused his administration on trying to meet people's needs in very concrete ways that he can point to. And so the more the Democratic Socialists are the ones who are doing that, and the only ones who are doing that, because Republicans certainly won't, and centrist Democrats don't know how to. And essentially what David Pakman is saying here is that liberals and social democrats, I guess, need to be ready to do that same type of organizing and reaching out and attempting to meet people where they're at very least rhetorically in campaigns, but also when it comes to policy. So that's where the social democrats can do a little bit, but because they're more in the centrist camp, they're not going to be able to offer and succeed in meeting people's needs in the same way that democratic socialism will. And so focusing on that idea of making it easier to put food on the table and bringing prices down, the idea that there are constantly people in government who are fighting against corporate power to make things more affordable for you, that is ultimately what's going to make it so that these attacks bounce off. And in the meantime, I think people just need to take it seriously, but not let them see you sweat. And so here is Hasan Piker responding to this a little bit, some of the stuff that Pakman said, and then I'll get a little bit more into some of the context when it comes to Destiny and what was going on there. I won't get too much into it, but Hasan mentions it here, and then we'll close
Most Americans understand that there is no way that you could impose that without extraordinary authoritarianism.
Yeah, I hate the extraordinary authoritarianism of the fucking postal service and the fire department, even the fucking police department and public schools. I hate that. We need to stop with this authoritarianism. Dude, are you a libertarian? No. Are you an anarcho-capitalist? No. So obviously there's a level of authoritarianism that you're actually comfortable with, right? And I thought you were far more open to the level of authoritarianism presented by the likes of FDR, or even presented in countries like Norway, Sweden, Finland, and many of these other places that social democrats love to point to and say we should do the same thing that they have over there. But now, when DSA is putting out a platform that's identical to the things that already exist in these other social democracies to a certain degree, you're like, that's authoritarianism. So apparently, you're not in favor of that. But this is also ideologically inconsistent, because there are certain things that I know he's defended. There are certain things that I know he's defended, whether it be Medicare for all or numerous other policies like that. That's authoritarianism. Medicare for all, universal healthcare is authoritarian by that exact same principle that you're mentioning.
Hasan Piker was dressed like Mao, and
dude, this is Fox News, brother. What is happening? This is tan suit, Fox News style. It's literally a Chinese suit, brother. Do you disagree with the things that I said in the College Democrats of America speech that I delivered? Did you watch the speech? Did you disagree with the things that I said in the speech? That is the question. He's trying to play the victim, and he didn't even go, yeah, bro, you were invited. Clearly, they don't fucking hate liberals. What do you mean? Like, Jamie Raskin was a speaker at this thing, right? Like, the idea that the young College Democrats of America, the College Democrats of America is some radical fucking organization is ridiculous. I am probably the most radical person that they allowed to speak at the event. Most of the other people are just like regular Democrats. You were invited to it. You chose not to go. You had other obligations. That's fine. But like, very clearly, it's not a anti-liberal space at all. It's not an illiberal space at all. There's many different ideologies, and sucks for you that, my worldview is also being represented more and more within the Democratic Party. He's saying that Destiny should have been let in. Yes, the reason why I'm bringing up the fact that he was invited and Destiny was not let in is because I don't think David Pakman would ever be so fucking stupid as to literally live stream himself and his weird psychopathic restraining order having besties openly film themselves with their intent to disrupt a speaking engagement. Okay? Because obviously if I were to do that and I got fucking, stopped, I would understand why.
Yeah, it's very bizarre that Pakman is kind of going with this idea that like, oh, they shut down Destiny because, Hasan didn't want Destiny there. And so that's what he's using to say, oh my gosh, would they even allow me to speak there? Completely ignoring or maybe missing the context that, Destiny was not invited and essentially announced that he was just going there to harass, and apparently followers of his did that as well. So that is because Destiny has made it his explicit mission to do that, to try to follow Hasan around and shout him down and become a problem for him. And it's obvious, it's clear that even if you disagree with the things Hasan says, it's better for the party. We've seen that it's positively affected Democratic candidates in primaries for Hasan to be getting his message out there. Him being screeched down by Destiny or creating that type of spectacle, which is clearly what Destiny wants. I don't see how that's meaningfully better for the movement in any way. It kind of just implies that Pakman also agrees that Hasan should be shut down in that way or prevented from speaking or whatever, and kind of shares that goal. It is interesting that he says this thing about the Nordic countries and socialism and those forms of social democracy or socialism, because Pakman brought that up in his video as well, that those are the types of social democracy that he supports. Hasan is pointing out that a lot of those forms of social democracy go further than what we have in America, certainly, and even in some cases further than what the DSA is advocating for. And so that's why it doesn't make sense that David Pakman is trying to take this moment where the left has so little leverage, barely any leverage at all, and the only leverage that they do have is coming from those democratic socialists. It's not coming from the social democrats. It's coming from democratic socialists who are winning, and they're offering real things, and they're meaningfully moving the conversation in the Democratic Party. So yes, they're going to fearmonger, they're going to play it on Fox News, etc. They do that already. They've done it to David Pakman already. I think that's another aspect of this. He's a little scared that he is lumped in with Hasan Piker, but that's how these things work. That's why punching left in this situation is not going to work to distance you from guys like this, and trying to silence people who are saying things that go further left than you is not going to save you, because if even you are radical enough that you're ending up on the government watch list, then that means the government's going to do anything that it can to stop anybody saying anything close to what you're saying. And that's why the only leverage that we have is in solidarity around that message. If you support Medicare for all, support the people who are fighting for Medicare for all, because it's not the liberals. The liberals and the social democrats, the guys who swear they're on board, they won't even articulate that they actually support Medicare for all. It's the leftist candidates who are saying, I support Medicare for all, that's what we need. So that type of moral clarity is needed. I don't know at what point David Pakman lost that. I think it has to do with Israel more than anything, but ultimately the movement will continue. The pearl clutching will continue as well. And so I think the answer is to just get very used to letting these things roll off the back and staying on message and staying on course as much as possible.
I'm in the pocket, and they know they can't slow it, can't stop shit. How the game so cold, so toxic. Can't drop cause they're in somebody's pocket. For me that's not it.